I think we're live.
Very good.
So, hello everyone, and welcome to the first peer-to-peer webcast hosted by Viventor. The peer-to-peer webcast is, of course, a webcast about peer-to-peer industry. We're launching a series of webcasts. This is the first one that we are going to launch, and the purpose of the first webcast today is to discuss the current situation the whole world is in and how it is affecting the peer-to-peer investment industry and investors and lending companies in general. So together with me today is Bernhard Hummel, who is our investor and is also a blogger and video blogger and a web blogger. He writes articles about investments and focuses in peer-to-peer very much, I would say, yes. And also with Bernhard, we met a few months ago in September, I think it was, in our office in Barcelona. And that's why we have met, let's say, physically before. Now we are meeting virtually, which might be true for some time in the future. And also joining me today as well is Gielen, who is the founder and CEO of Atlantis Financiers, one of our biggest loan originators on the Viventor platform. With Lex, we also met a few months back when we were doing a tour of his company together with my colleague. And we did a report on that as well a few months ago. So welcome, gentlemen, to the first peer-to-peer webcast.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to start maybe telling a few words about Viventor. Then I will ask some questions from Bernhard and Lex, and then we will, of course, move on to the main topic of today's webcast, is to answer the questions that quite a few investors have asked us on Slido during the last few days. And because the purpose of this discussion is to have as much transparency as possible to our investors. And so starting to talk about Viventor, we of course are now all working from home. Good thing is that our business is in such area which can be completely digitalized. We didn't have any, let's say, we don't have any problems working completely remotely. We have all our systems, employee systems, accessible through secure networks through VPN. And of course, every employee has a laptop, company laptop, that they were able to still bring back home. So all business is continuing as usual, process-wise. Of course, there is uncertainty and clarity in what is happening in the world, around us. So mainly we are focusing right now on doing business, not so much focusing on growth as we used to before, but mostly focusing on managing the situation, explaining the situation to our investors, and also constantly and closely monitoring the situation at each loan originator. So that is how we've been working and living the last few days. Now, that's mainly shortly about maybe what's happening on Viventor. There will be more questions that I'll be able to answer. Now, moving on to Bernhard. Maybe Bernhard, you can give also a small overview of how you as an investor see current markets. I know that there has been quite a few jumps, up and down, historical even jumps in the equity market. Also, how do you see your share of investments moving, progressing between equity and fixed income assets like peer-to-peer? And maybe something else you want to share with us.
Okay, so thank you first of all for having me. Thank you for giving us the opportunity for such a webcast. I really appreciate this as an investor, and I think some of the viewers might know me. I'm first of all private investor and also, as I said, investor of Viventor. And so it's a very busy time at the moment, to be honest. Also, this started in the morning when there were these delays on transfer at VIVENTOR, for example, and then we had some incidents with the loan originator at Mintos. And so, yeah, it's pretty really busy. And also that was the reason why I was a little bit distracted, because I get messages from all the CEOs every minute at the moment, I would say. So it's, yeah, very, very busy time. And it's time of panic, I think, and I don't need to say so much, I think, about Corona, because everybody follows the news at the moment and will know the situation. But maybe to put it in a nutshell, or say some words, I was already made some videos about this on my YouTube channel, my opinion on generally on the market in this situation, where I talk about 40 minutes about this topic. So I will make it very short right now. Also a video where I talk about my purchases, because a lot of people are asking me this in those days, and it's very important, I think, to have this exchange. It's also why I appreciate this very much, that you make this webcast. Yeah, it's really very, very helpful for us investors, I believe. So about the market, I think we all saw the stock market that crashed a lot. Compared to that, it was not that volatile on the fixed income with my P2P investments. I think a lot of the followers and people who know me might know that I have about 30% in P2P and about 40% on the stock market invested. And but of course, there are opportunities at the stock market. I was doing purchases at the stock market a lot since the last 10 days, because I see opportunity at the stock market. And yeah, I mean, I did not have this loss of value as I had it before in the crash at the stock market. I didn't have this yet at the P2P. I mean, there's still a nominee of the loans I own, so it's still fixed income. I didn't really see a lot of change on the income in the last days, because I usually have about 2,000 euro P2P interest return a month, all in all, from all platforms. And this did not really change, even in these times at the moment. But of course, there is a lot of panic in the market. Everywhere, there's panic everywhere. I think you already saw the bank run on the traditional banks in the last days. Yeah, and there are also some banks that said, okay, we have to limit the withdrawal for the clients. I think it was somewhere in Germany, Stuttgart or somewhere. So it's everywhere panic, and one can understand this, because it's a situation nobody would have believed only a few months ago. Nobody knew about that something like this could ever happen. And so it's panic time for sure. But I think especially in these situations, it's not only to have panic. I think for us investors, it's very important to calm down, to look forward. And if there is, let me say, blood in the streets and a lot of panic, there are also usually opportunities if you look on the long term. And this is what I try to do at the moment. And I see this especially in the stock market, to be honest, at the moment, because there are a lot of discounts right now. For sure, it will have a massive impact on the industry in any way, on the complete financial markets and on the complete economy. Yeah. But I think there are opportunities already because of this panic. And I think the same might be in the P2P. So at the moment, I'm, of course, a little bit nervous about P2P, to be honest. Yes, for sure. Everybody is, I think, in these times. Because the risk is much higher, I believe, and there is so much going on in the last days, the delays and the transfers, and then news all the time, everywhere, everybody's panicking, and then you really have to stay calm and look forward. But at least I was talking to a lot of other CEOs as well, and so also I appreciate the talks. And we also had a talk, I think 1 week ago, you called me, and we were talking also about the opportunities, and it's usually about supply and demand. And I can remember the time at the end of August, a lot of people complained that the interest rates are going down. Yeah, this was because a lot of investors wanted to invest their money, and there was not so much demand on loans in this time in general. Yeah. Now it's different. Now we have a lot of demand of loans, I think, and it will even increase in the next weeks. And other CEOs already told me there is an increase in Spain and Poland and so on. And not so many investors want to invest money in high-risk P2P at the moment. So, of course, interest rates are going up, and I think it's also an opportunity. So risk and interest rates are increasing. And now I'm very curious what you can tell us about your opinion on the situation. And I think in those days, it's the most important thing that we have exchanged. and that we can also learn more. And it's a chance to learn more about the whole industry, to understand everything even more, because we can see the business behind. So yeah, now very curious about your opinion on that. And over to you.
Yeah, so basically, as I said previously, we're doing much more checks and discussions with our loan originators, like how to say, temperature measurements of the healthiness of the business in general, and the overall, let's say, picture that we see is that also, as us, most of our absolute majority of our loan originators are also agile, lean, digital businesses who are able to scale up when necessary and scale down when necessary as well. So it's you know, as in any business, it's survival of the fittest. So when the crisis like this comes, when you have to see what you can live without, what is essential to your business, how you can continue, what portfolios you have, what customers you have. And the general picture from what we see is that, again, it's important to stress that the situation is so dynamic that it is evolving every day. So what we are speaking today, what I am speaking about today, what you and Lex will be speaking about today is basically about information that we have today at hand. What will be tomorrow or the day after, nobody knows. So investors as well are probably aware of this fact. So please treat it with in respect to the information that we have today. So today we see that lending companies are all have let's say plans for future. No one is going, let's say, into immediate default or bankruptcy right now. We see companies that are some companies have cash cushions or reserves laid off for worse times. Some have longer periods of loans and see their customers still doing repayments. We had one lending company who said that they even had, in the first days of this crisis, they said that they even have a bigger increase in earlier repayments than previously, because people are who borrow for consumer lending, they now are sitting at home, can't leave your home, can't spend money,
can't pay,
can't spend money on various things. So you have still some income accumulating or coming in from either your employer or the compensation from the government. So first thing that you do with this money is probably repay your loans. So this is what was happening so far. But yeah, of course, everybody is looking anxiously at the future and seeing how it will perform. So far, mostly all of our loan originators, maybe Lex is one of the exceptions, see a decrease in demand for lending. Some of them have ceased lending operations at all. I mean, new lending operations, just looking at the current portfolio. Actually, later today, in a few hours time from now, or latest tomorrow morning, all our investors will receive a report about this information that we collected from each loan originator, about each individual loan originator dealing with the situation, what is happening right now. So you will know company by company what is going on. So we have it it's in the final steps now to be presented to investors right now. So yeah, this is like the overall view of what we see. Maybe now it's a good time we move to Lex and also ask you. Atlantis Financiers is a company that you founded together with your wife, right? And you are the main and only shareholder of the company. And tell us what's going on with your business. I know that your business is mostly focusing on the B2B segment. Yes, your customers are small and medium enterprises. So give us and investors a view. What's happening? What's going on?
So yeah, well, same as Bernhard, thank you for invitation to explain our vision of the current situation as a loan originator. Predicting the current market is, of course, difficult. We do see movements. It is also difficult to predict how long the pandemic will last. From our point of view as loan originator, we see a huge increasement of the numbers of credit applications from small, medium-sized companies. Credit applications usually involves obtaining extra capital because they don't know what the market is going to do, and they want to attract money for it, like for bad times or what's going on. What we also see is that despite the fact that many people work from home, the business continues. At the moment, we do not see a shrinkage in our sectors in which we are active. There's turnover likely to come from the previous period, like without the corona. I do expect sales for the next 3 months to be lower for some customers. But again, it should be said that this does not apply to every industry. For example, if we look at an employment agency for personnel, we see an increasement in personnel for supermarkets and logistics centers. If we look for the transport sector, you will see less international transport, but most domestic transports. That's related to transports for food, equipment, and our customers therefore are innovative in finding the right market at this specific moment. In the next 3 months, I expect a shrinkage in turnover with our current customers, but I also expect an increase in the number of new applications from customers who are currently in the sectors where there is a lot of work to be done. In addition to that, the Dutch government has announced a number of support measures. Among the other things, the government will offer a guarantee for companies that do not have sufficient collateral and guarantee it. For us, it's a good solution to give us as a lending the missing collateral, like the ones we can't have right now on the small medium enterprises. Government is working hard to make the support accessible to everyone. They are aiming on the small medium enterprises, but also the one-man companies in Netherlands. We have a lot of them, and I hope it will become clear in the next future, and I expect a few days, so that we can better protect our interests on those new applications. This afternoon it was announced that the number of affected people more generally in the Netherlands is decreasing in the statistics, and the pressure on the hospitals also starting to decrease a bit. The proposed measures therefore seems to be worked. With this, speedy recovering is more than expected. It's we are in a good way at the moment. As I said, the future is difficult to predict, but the government drives a lot of money for helping companies, and therefore trust and restore the help, but also, of course, in the financial system in the Netherlands.
Yeah, but also maybe you have some, what I was thinking also today, one question is that, you know, one thing is to deal with the outbreak right now. The other thing is probably to continue business after, let's say, there are no more new cases, but probably the countries and the borders will not be as open as they used to before, and international trade will probably not be happening right away from day one after the outbreak is closed. Even what we see with China is that they still have closed borders, they still have a lot of checks, etc. So how do you see it? Do you see it more as a, let's say, some shortcomings that we'll have to deal with globally, or it will be more significantly affecting the industry and your customers in general?
I think the last one. I think the last one will be for us, and yeah, it's quite hard to predict that for now.
Yeah, of course. Let's. It's also. I'm also often asked about making predictions. So, but now, only it's prediction.
It's hard.
That doesn't matter much because every day we hear something new. Of course, that's true. Okay. Good to know this. Bernhard, maybe you have some more questions before we move on. You have something.
I think we can move on to Slido questions because it's nearly everything covered, and I thank my investor colleagues so much for these questions because it's exactly also what I'm curious about. So I think we just go through these questions and we will have covered a lot, and I'm really excited about your answers because in these times it's so important to have this transparent exchange you offer right now with this webcast. And so thank you again for that. And I think I wanted to add something, as you said, because you said it's everything developing. Yes, it is. And I feel sure we will know more after these rumors. We don't know how long it will take, this situation of this coronavirus. We don't know how long it will be closed, but I have my eye, as Lex said as well, on China, and it was about 8 weeks. And now the most things are reopening already. Of course, not the borders and so on, but it's reopening again. So I think we have to look on maybe 8 to 12 weeks. So there is also a horizon and there is some time beyond. And I think that's also maybe some painful for some of us, maybe also for me partly, painful experience because there might be some loan originators, I think that's only my opinion as an investor on this developing story, that will not do it maybe, that will go insolvent in these days. And I'm afraid also some platforms, and especially the ones we have not so many informations, how they face the situation, and their CEOs are maybe not so behind it. Yeah. So I really appreciate your efforts, Andrius. And I already saw this when we met the first time in Spain some months ago. So really appreciate that you are now at Viventor taking care. And I think, but on the other hand, it might be some market adjustment. So we might feel even stronger after these rumors, I believe. This is also an opportunity because then nobody can say we had no crisis in P2P time. Yeah. But we also have to add that in lending business and also in P2P, there have been a lot of platforms also that told us that have been the best times in the bad times for them. Yeah. So in the economic downturn. Yeah. So I think there's still an opportunity. But yeah, let's continue to the questions maybe.
Yeah. So like as we discussed before, it would be good to have Bernhard being the voice of all investors here present in our call, that you read out the questions. I will just switch to the Slido screen shortly so that you can read the question, and then depending on who the question is intended to, either myself or Lex or even you, Bernhard, maybe will answer that.
Okay, and I will take care that you answer them really, yeah?
Yeah.
Because people know I'm very tough at this point, yeah? So it's not easy for CEOs having an interview with me sometimes, yeah?
Yep, okay.
So you give us the questions on the screen because I'm waiting for them to read them. Here they are, okay, very good. So I think let's start directly with the first one. Somebody is asking how much runway capital does Viventor have to survive this storm? Will Finster Group guarantee to keep the platform alive if impacted for significant time?
Yeah, so to answer this question shortly is that yes, we have very good and strong shareholders behind us. Finster Group has more than 2 billion euros in a portfolio of loans and strong financial position. Our capital is now 1.5 million euros. We have increased it recently because we are, as we have announced maybe earlier, are applying for a financial brokerage license in Latvia. Similarly to other platforms as well, we will be introducing this securitization business model further on, and nobody knows what will happen and how long this crisis will continue. But in my opinion, one thing is for certain is that it will end eventually. And we are all of us are in the business of movement of money, movement of funds, and in general, this requirement for movement of funds, lending and investing will always be there. So in general, I see that this industry should continue after this and shall continue after this. We share the same view with our shareholders, and they also have some companies of Finstar are also present on our marketplace, and they are for that also reason they are particularly interested to keeping the platform alive and through this let's say storm, as it's called here. And also we are doing some calculations, savings on cutting costs and investments. And as you might know, previously we announced that we are saying that the platform is still loss making because it's still focusing on growth so much. We are still, let's say, one of the smaller platforms in the industry, but with big ambitions to grow. If we cut these ambitions right now and focus mainly on sustaining the business throughout this situation, we are basically living on a virtually break-even point, so we can sustain ourselves without even shareholders' intervention. So depending on the situation, either we will have shareholder support or we will even survive without it. That's my current let's say prognosis based on the facts we have today.
So to make it short, Finster Group guarantee, yes or no?
We don't have a written guarantee, a formal guarantee. We have verbal meetings with the shareholders, and so far they are positive.
Okay, then let's move to the next question.
Yeah, let's move to the next question. Share screen again.
So it's the next one. If Atlantis B2B sector is noticing more delays and defaults already, how will they keep ensuring liquidity for buybacks? Different behavior in the Netherlands and Belgium clients? I think it's to Lex.
It's a question for me. Yeah, it's a question for me. Well, at this moment, there are no major delays or payments from our customers. In addition, we deal with credit insurers that we can provide additional coverage of any defaults with debtors of our customers. After all, that is a way in which our financing model works. Atlantis Financiers also have a good cash position on itself and is able to absorb any defaults if that's the case. During the crisis, our accent is also on good debtor management, and we keep grip on the portfolio. So it can be quickly predicted whatever and when payments problems will arise, and any problems will be visible in an early stage.
Okay, so there is an insurance usually behind.
We use invoice insurance, yes. For most of the invoices, we have an invoice insurance company. We do.
Okay, so they give the guarantee.
They give the guarantee, yeah.
Okay.
So like the major ones, Cofas, Atradius, Euler Hermes, I think they are quite familiar in the finance sector.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, let's move on.
Question.
Next question. Here we are.
Are investors' funds currently separately stored in a fully segregated bank account? If not, will you dedicate a segregated account as additional safety measure? Andrius.
Yeah, that's a question for us. So yes, investor funds are kept in a separate account, even in a different institution from where we keep our own company funds. And this account is segregated from us. We are not accounting for it in our balance sheet. So in the funds kept in our account are secured from our default as a company, should that happen. And of course, there are always not a lot of funds happening there because it's just funds in transfer between investors and loan originators. So in any way, mostly all investors' funds are usually invested with loan originators. So we never keep those funds with us for longer than necessary.
Okay, so separated? Yes.
Yep.
Which other financial sources does Atlantis Financiers have besides Viventor funding? Could they also weather a longer than expected storm of, say, 6 to 12 months?
Well, it's a question for me. Funding of Atlantis Financiers largely comes from Viventor. A large part also is self-financed from equity. it isn't unlikely that the turnover will fall enormously, especially since we are active dealing with these crises. But nevertheless, we have a good buffer and we'll be able to deal with any problems. The external funding of Viventor is also partly important in this, as part of a portfolio is now refinanced, and we will continue, of course, to serve our customers. We see the collaboration with Viventor as a relationship partnership, which means that the investors are indirectly our partners as well. We like to treat our partners well in any way, and we have proven to deliver good returns in the past. And well, for now, we don't want to do anything else in the future. Operationally, our risk is quite limited because we work as a fintech. Our costs are mainly in IT. It's one of the as measures the government has announced that they will take over personal costs in event of lost turnover, like turnover from Atlantis financiers. It is not necessary for us to meet a customer face to face or anything like it. We can do it by video communication, so like this. So right now we don't function much differently than before crisis, except that the team is working from home. Atlantis financiers called a very bad period of 12 months with the announced government measures. However, our business model is expected to be interesting because we make decisions quickly, and this helps us companies like right now when they need it. For example, to banks that they have a long process for just issuing credit. So we are sort of in advance opposite to banks, because we can really we can handle quite fast, since we have a quite fast decision process.
And it's very automated, as I saw when we visited your office as well. Yeah,
it's a fintech. Yeah, it is. We do a lot with automation.
Bernhard, you want to add something here to follow up on that, or?
I think we go to the next question. I think that's
sure.
answered.
Let's continue.
Have you started immediately with daily, weekly checks on each loan originator to closely monitor performance to ensure financial health as adjusted risk assessment measure? Andrius, very important.
Yes, actually, during the last week and this week, we have made more than 100 actually calls, video calls with our loan originators. We have 15 companies on our platform, so 8-7 calls with each one of them. We are asking many questions, and one is not only financial, but also how the company is dealing. Are they able to work remotely? How is everything going on? So mainly every day we are on the call with them. Also starting to every day monitor the performance of portfolio and delays in portfolio, what is happening right now, and so that we are able to act fast and inform our investors about any changes that should be reported to them immediately, so that there is no delay in information. So previously we did, let's say, from time to time periodic checks, and we were asking for financial information update every quarter. Now we have close communication with each loan originator on a daily basis.
So you take care a lot about this, and we will also get the newsletter, I think, with the updates in the next hours or days.
Yeah, we actually, I was hoping to release it before it, but I think it's also good to release it a few hours afterwards, since it's still a hot topic, and together we will probably include this link to this video to that release, and also release the update of all the statuses of our loan originator companies as well.
Okay, thank you. And I think we will have a next webcast in next week, maybe, or
yeah.
So we can follow up questions. We can also ask in the next weeks for sure. I think it's also learning for all of us, because it's the first time I'm doing this, so a little bit nervous. And also this, I got a lot of news from other platforms. In these moments, it was a little bit distracting because this was not only good news. So yeah, but anyway, now I'm back at focusing on this webcast, and
Yeah,
I
let's
think we can
continue.
Continue to the next question, huh?
Continue to the next question.
How does Viventor keep making sure to avoid a shortage of liquidity and therefore potential delay with withdrawals of investors' funds? Maybe Andrius, you can explain at this point also how you do it with the settlement, because I think it's going back to this question as well. Because there was some delay at the moment. Maybe you can explain the situation.
Yeah, this is an important topic. We can spend a little bit more time here to explain the situation to investors. So ours, as many other platforms, so far was working in a separate cycle between information and fund transfers, meaning that lending companies, when they are making repayments, when they are receiving repayments from the customers, they are informing us as a platform about these repayments through a technological channel, through API. And based on this information, we make changes to our platform. Basically, we show to investors that they already are going to receive funds on their account. Afterwards, there is a clearing cycle, which is normally is 1 week, once a week. And during this once a week period, we actually receive these funds that are to be paid by the loan originator to us. Or if, let's say, the situation is that more investments were made than repayments, then Viventor is to pay to the loan originator. So this clearing cycle is happening. And actually today we received a few questions from investors why the payments were delayed, why there was a delay in withdrawals that they were asking to make. So that was actually the reason for it, was that we yes, we received quite some withdrawal requests, and not so many new investors opened their accounts and decided to invest in these first days of this crisis. So for this reason, we had more to pay, more to receive from the loan originators, and we had to wait for this clearing cycle to happen so that we were able to pay for withdrawals. But as of now, we have paid the withdrawals that people were asking to pay, and the cycle is continuing again. Also, important point to mention is that in order to protect investors' interest and to make sure that we will always receive this money and are able to pay to investors all the time, we also decided to introduce this pending payment status functionality. And we will be doing it in a separate announcement, but it should not be taking much longer. It will basically mean that while Viventor as a platform does not receive funds from loan originators on our account, investors will not be able to either invest this money or withdraw this money. So that's the main changing factor now. We are introducing now this while still in good health, in order to stay in good health and not to have any liquidity problems in the future, because nobody knows now what the future will bring. So this is probably answering this question, that if we introduce it right now or in as soon as days, there will be no shortage of liquidity for us to pay to investors.
So these pending payments, you already put it on the platform?
It will be implemented soon. We will send a separate announcement about it and all the rules and conditions about it to our investors. But now I would say it's a question of days.
Of days. Okay, so yeah. Waiting for that. Maybe we can talk about this in the next webcast then.
Yeah.
Would make more sense, yeah.
Yeah. So it is basically a method of how we as a platform can eliminate any liquidity risk from our business, because being a marketplace, we are not in the business of lending money or investing money. We are just a company that connects investors and loan originators. So having that functionality, we are 100% sure that we are always able to pay to investors and are always able to pay to loan originators, which should be the case for us.
Maybe one additional question from my side. When we are talking about new features, do you think about the two-factor authentication? Because there is a lot of crime in the internet, especially in those days, and it would make it more secure.
Yes, of course. There is actually we have even broader plan to introduce. We want to introduce both two-factor authentication and also much stricter conditions to become investor and open an account with Viventor. So we will introduce video onboarding, same as banks are doing, with artificial intelligence algorithm used to identify the face of the person that is opening an account, and identify and check if the person is who he claims to be, and if it's not politically exposed person, etc. So all these plans we have in the future, we're actually planning to release them quite soon. But now with current situation, we of course have to reshuffle our priorities a bit.
Sure. So it's about know your customer at least, no?
Yes, correct.
The subscription, okay. Okay, so I think next question.
Yep.
I don't want to ask too much by myself because there's, I think, everything covered in some questions in any way from the community. Okay, so here we have it. Is it now higher risk if loan originators use multiple platforms for funding, Quico, Mintos, Viventor, Bonster, Fast Invest, for example, since it can signal weakness over ledgering? I think, for example, we can also say one of your loan originator because this is one from somebody else. But if we take, for example, Ibancar, they are funding from Viventor, they are funding from Groupier. I think a third one, I don't know it at the moment, but there is another one, I think. Yeah, so what's your opinion, Andrius?
Of course, as with every company and with every individual, it is a matter of controlling. And if we are able to control and understand the total leverage point of each company, for us it's more control. For example, at Viventor, we implement a limit of how much money a loan originator can borrow based on its portfolio, so that we always want to keep shareholders' funds in place as well, so that not only investors are funding the business, but the shareholder of the company is also involved. And when we are the only company that is doing that, of course it's easier, but when it is split among multiple platforms, we unfortunately cannot know day by day of how much how big a portfolio is invested on our on other platforms besides ourselves. So probably I would not even now, but I would agree that if a lending company is raising funds through multiple platforms, it might turn it might increase the risk of over-leveraging, but maybe not a signal of weakness. It's just a matter of companies, let's say, policy and ideas of how to raise money for their business. You know, on every platform, there is always a situation of supply and demand. The supply is of loans and demand is for investors. And this is like with every business, is fluctuating. Sometimes there are more investors than loans. Sometimes there are more loans than investors. So platforms are looking to raise money. And if on one platform they cannot raise that money, they're turning to another platform. And for them, it is maybe even a sign of possibilities. So if they cannot raise money on Viventor or on Bonster or on Fast Invest, they can move to Mintos and vice versa. So good and bad. So yes, there is a risk of over leveraging, of course, but there is more opportunities to raise money for them if, let's say, on one platform there is less investors than on another. So it's up to each, how to say, investor to decide what he thinks about it.
Yeah, advantage and disadvantage is also maybe more controlling if there are more platforms having a close look on them. So yeah, advantage and disadvantage, I would say. Maybe let's continue with the next question.
Yep.
How will Viventor guarantee not to running out of liquidity and avoid the platform to go bankrupt? I think we had a very similar one, but this is very direct. So maybe you want to say something concrete.
Basically, there's a combination of two things. One thing is that by introducing the pending payments functionality, we eliminate liquidity risk from our marketplace, from the segregated funds account. and by implementing the cost-saving measures that we plan to do, removing any growth plans and growth plans. As I said previously, we are on a level of sane sustainability. If the income from our business is continuing as it was before, and also with the support from shareholder, we should be able to survive this situation for the next coming months. And within these months, it is my hope that the situation will resolve.
I think we have some other questions on this topic as well, so I will not make a follow-up question because we have this in the community questions, I think. So maybe let's continue.
Okay.
I think the order has changed a little bit from the questions right now, so we have to take care that we
answer all of them. But since the plan is to go through all of them, so we will.
Yeah, we just have to take care if the thumbs up, change the order, then might be difficult that we don't overlook one.
Yeah.
Which loan originator currently in the marketplace have at any point been late with payments to Viventor? How often did this happen and how long was this delay?
Currently, all our payments are on time. We don't receive any delays in these payments. Just there is some fluctuation in these settlement amounts because of the money is sometimes we have now quite a lot of withdrawals and quite not so much of new deposits and new investments as previously. So for this reason, we still have to wait for this clearing cycle to continue. That's probably why this question is also, let's say, can be misinterpreted, the situation. As I said previously, we did a good, I think we did a good review of all loan originators. We will share this review with the investors. But in the end, it's again about for each investor to decide. We are not an investment advisor company. We are just a marketplace. Our position is to present all the information as clear as possible, but the choice and decision is always on the investor side.
Yep. You show me the questions then.
Yeah. Another question in line.
Okay. What are your realistic expectations of how many Viventor loan originators you foresee going into bankruptcy in the worst, middle, and best case scenario? Very interesting question. Very direct, but very interesting.
Yes, question is interesting. Of course, it would be nice to know the answer, but in this light, as I said previously, when we have news coming in virtually every day and predictions don't matter very much. I would say a president of United States is a very good example of how his predictions about the future of the virus are not so realistic every day.
Yeah, but maybe you have some estimation or some ideas or some thoughts.
I can speak
in general. What do you think in general about the industry?
I can speak on the basis of facts that we see, that we collected. So looking at the facts that we see right now, I don't see that any of the loan originators that we have investigated has now is facing a default right now. I see that all of them are able to pay for their repayments to the investors, and that they are that they have managed to accommodate their business to such situation which is now. Some of them had to let some people go. Some of them had to cut off on marketing expenses and only working on the repayment of existing portfolio. There were a lot of changes needed to make, and I see that all of them have done these changes. And today, I don't see any one of them going into default. Tomorrow, I don't know what will happen.
Yeah. Risky times.
So I think it's the fairest answer that I can give in this situation.
Okay, thank you. So you give me the next.
Yeah, I'll give. But as
seeking
you
for
said,
them, okay.
I'm seeking because they have. Yeah, it is.
I think
here.
they changed the order. Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, but now I found the next question. It is this one.
Okay. Will you be laying off Viventor employees and/or drastically cut costs elsewhere? How will it affect your operations? What positions will you eliminate first? Yeah, very curious about that as well as an investor.
Yeah, a good question. I know that my employees are watching this video call as well, so have to be fair with them as well. Of course, it is unpleasant to let people go, and nobody knows what will be in the future. Good thing is this, that so far we are managing with current positions that we have.
Okay.
Of course, further on, we might be able to cut costs. We as a company are working both with full-time employees, and we are, of course, have some contractors and freelancers that we hire, let's say for design activities or something that is required from time to time. So first things that we eliminate is all these non-essential growth-oriented elements to our business. If crisis deepens and we need to go even lower than that, of course there is a plan to survive with bare minimum, so to say, so to keep platform alive throughout the platform, and then hopefully to get the team back on track when it is necessary. So in such case, of course, in every business area there would be cuttings. So but the
no
plan,
cuttings yet.
So far we didn't do any cuttings. We just do cost reductions on all the expenses that we were planning, like marketing and design, new development, etc.
Okay, but still you are behind the two-factor authentication and the pending payment features.
Yeah.
It did not change.
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe one more follow-up question, this time from my side, because we met last time in the headquarters in Barcelona. People can find this video on my YouTube channel, Investment Talks. And you told me in those days that you will move to an office in Vilnius.
Yes.
Now, of course, you're sitting, I think, at home in your home office, yeah, like all of us at the moment. But how is it going on with this office in Vilnius, and when can I visit it? I mean, of course, I cannot visit it because of the virus right now, but except that.
Well, actually, we are planning to move to a new office since 1st of April, but I don't think it will happen because the quarantine has been today extended in Lithuania until at least middle of April. So probably we will stay in home offices for now. But yeah, we have now a contract for a few years in a new office place where we were about to move all team, and so far we have, of course, to wait and see how this crisis resolves itself.
And meanwhile, I mean, I know the answer, but I think it's maybe interesting for the investors as well. You were working in the headquarters Barcelona on the one side, and on the other side you had a co-working space in Vilnius, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So far we are yes, we are in a co-working space in Vilnius. We're not sitting in this public, let's say, space, but we are sitting in a private office of this co-working space. So we are completely separated from public. But we are already outgrown this space, and we needed a bigger office. That's why we and a permanent location. That's why we moved. We planned to move to this new office that we have rented out for a few years now, for 2 years term, and now we have to wait. But
part of the team is still in Barcelona, or is the whole team now in Vilnius? IT, or I don't know, IT or something.
90% of team that, and all the team that is full-time working on the project is in Vilnius. Some people that we are outsourcing throughout a Finstar group, basically in IT and in some other areas, are in Barcelona.
Okay, I understand. And the contract is still valid and will not be under cost cuttings. So you will definitely move to this office as soon as possible.
You mean the rent contract?
Yeah, the rent contract of this new office.
Oh yeah, we already paid the deposit, so we have no other choice but to move.
Have to.
So you have to, okay.
Yeah.
And you will do as soon as possible. Okay, then I think let's move fast to the next question of the community.
Yep, here it is.
Which one? Okay. Will you be actively checking on which loan originators are currently over leveraged or might be soon? How will you handle this extreme high risk to protect your investors?
I think I partially or probably answered this question before, that we are doing now constant checks. Over leveraging, really difficult to check, because platforms are not, let's say, exchanging information between themselves about how much funds have been invested into one or another company, and so no possibility to understand that position really, but we are doing whatever we can to understand and have the most up-to-date information about the loan originators and their portfolio on Vivento platform.
Okay. So let's continue to the next one.
Let's continue to the next one. Yeah.
What are you planning to do if countries impose a moratorium of 3 to 6 months on loan repayments? Yeah, that's a really good question, because that's a difficult point, I think, for us investors.
I think both me and Lex could comment on that. Yes, so maybe I can start, and then if from Viventor's point of view, and then if Lex has something to add, feel free. Yes, a moratorium, or let's say an extension of loans for a longer period of time is happening even right now already in some countries, and companies are encouraged to postpone the repayments, especially for people who have no possibility to earn money right now because they are laid off or the business has stopped for multiple reasons. So our goal is, of course, to not break the business cycle of lending companies, but rather to look at the position of how we could sustain this and reflect the situation to our investors. Previously, when it was announced, I announced, I think it myself, on peer-to-peer investors group on Facebook, that Viventor was planning to introduce loan extensions as a feature. Meaning that if a loan is extended for a longer period than previously, and it is an agreement between the lender and the borrower, and the loan is not in a default, it's actually just a change of contract, it should be reflected on investor side. And if it happens en masse, if it happens on the whole portfolio, it can be quite dramatic for a loan originator if he has to actually buy back those loans, but in reality is not defaulting any of the customers, but just whole of his portfolio is in delay. So in my opinion, it's in the interest in all investors to not impose significant pressure on the cash flow of the lender, but in reality to basically get the investments back sooner or later with interest.
I think it's very critical that regulations are like this, because I mean, of course, it's a difficult topic in any way, because I can understand the regulations of the countries that they want to save a little bit or want to help the borrowers. But on the other side of the whole claim, there is also, of the whole chain, let me say, there's also the investor, and we are living from this income as well. And if they say, okay, we just extend it, I mean, there might have been scheduled repayments, there is a contract, and it's very critical that just an authority and regulation of a country can just say, okay, we give you more time to pay back, and there is an invest, but it's not their money, it's our money, at least, our investors' money. And I think it would also be a problem if we cannot pay the bakery or something like that, because we don't get the interest, which is our income. So on the one hand, I can understand that, but on the other hand, I think it's very critical, and so critical topic, I think. Can understand both sides.
Yep. Lex, maybe you want to add something to that. What is your position, and what is currently the situation on this delay of repayments and governments imposing of this moratorium?
Well, in the Netherlands, there are developments here for banks. It's not like they don't have to give customers another contract than they had before. But at this moment, this sort of regulation doesn't apply yet for alternative lenders. So it doesn't involve us. It can be that it will be allowed for us.
Mm. Mm.
Could be. I don't know. Could be.
Okay, moving on probably, yes, Bernhard?
Sure. Okay, new one, yes. Will Finster Financial Group provide additional financing to Credit Forza if it will be necessary for buying back the non-performing loans?
Basically, all companies, including us that belong to Finster Group, are backed by the shareholder, and so far we see that they are, and they tell us that they are financially stable and are able to pay all their debts, even in case of buybacks, and to sustain both the businesses and us as well. Of course, there is a requirement, and we all have to do our best to be as optimal on costs as possible in current situation.
Okay. Who are the shareholders?
Finstar.
Finstar. And who is the owner of Finstar?
Finstar is the owner of Finstar Group is Oleg Boyko, the Russian entrepreneur.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear that. I knew it, but I wanted to make it public. Because last time you didn't say this in the interview we had in Barcelona.
Yeah, but as I said, it was a matter of transition of ownership. It was a little bit postponed, not postponed, but it is a long process. But yeah, so far it's currently it is still the same shareholder that we have.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on, probably.
Yeah. Maybe I also want to encourage my investor colleagues, if they have questions, they should write it down right now so we can make it in the next webcast, follow-up questions to these ones. Yeah. Okay, so the next one, what are the changes in the demand for loans last 10 days? Do you see any trends in structure volumes?
I think it's a question for Lex.
I think for both of you.
For us, we have an increasement of applications, but not. It's just for not the highest or volume, just an increasement of applications, but not more than that. Just work capital, mostly.
To answer on the Viventor side, if it was meant that what are the changes in demand for investment into loans, probably yes. That's
what they mean. Yeah.
So the demand has decreased somewhat, but not as dramatic as I was personally maybe a little bit afraid of. But now I see that the situation is stabilizing on Viventor platform. We had some withdrawals, especially in the first days when there was first big news about this outbreak going wild. So yeah, but now when everybody sees that, okay, it's still going on, people are still paying back, everything is still moving forward, it's more or less stabilizing. But of course, the demand for investment has decreased. And as we hear from many loan originators, the demand for lending has decreased as well. So yeah.
This is strange for me because I mean, decreased at the moment, maybe yes, but I think it will increase as soon as business is starting again.
I believe my personal opinion, it's not like any investment advice, so to say, but my personal opinion is that in the first days of this situation, when people are locked in at home and most of our businesses are still a consumer lending business, so you don't have a lot of necessity to invest in, because it's usually, you know, buy a new car, to renovate your apartment, to do some unexpected expenses.
Yeah, even traveling is not possible. So.
Or yeah, even traveling is not possible. So now it's just a matter of decreased consumption in general, and for that reason, decreased in the borrowing. And later on, especially on SME segment, I would say that small medium enterprises will need boost in their business to start when all these restaurants will have to reopen again, when all these shops will have to reopen again. They will need to get people back. They will need to restock, etc. So for all these reasons, they will need some funds as well. So I expect the demand to be increasing, and quite dramatically increasing, when the first quarantine lockdowns will start to be lifted.
And I think also if people lost their job, they will not feel it right now. They will feel it in the next months, because now they still got their payments. Yeah, and so it might be a little bit delayed. Yeah, in the next months.
And many countries are still compensating for the somewhat, at least for the period when the person is without a job right now.
Yeah, and I think this is also something we can benefit from, because then they can repay our loans with governmental help. This is the plus on the situation. It's negative and critical to see that they want to freeze the repayment of the loans, but on the other hand, it's helpful that they will give some help, which at least goes back to us. Okay, so next question.
Will Viventor terminate? Sorry, it's your question.
You can do it, no problem. Will Viventor terminate agreements with loan originators the moment you see their financial performance deteriorates and the risk becomes irresponsible for investors?
Absolutely. That's the main reason why we are doing the daily checks and background checks. We don't want to be, we want to be, let's say, first in line who know about the situation that is happening in the loan originator side. And of course, in general, it is our position to make sure that not only to manage the both things, that investors are protected, and that we are able to secure our portion of buybacks to our investors as much as possible, especially when loan originators are raising money on multiple platforms and from multiple sources. So various, first thing is to inform investors that they are no longer investing into this company. Second thing is to start immediate talks and negotiations of how this portfolio that is currently invested in Viventor will be repaid. Will it be restructured? Will there be some legal action involved? My personal opinion is that it's always a matter of finding a business solution, because legal solution and going through, let's say, courts, etc., should be the last effort. We should still always be able to find a legal solution, because that means that you are still able to receive funds from a loan originator as fast as possible. But of course, we are ready to take legal action immediately when we see that the loan originator is showing signs of default immediately. And for that reason, we are doing these constant checks right now.
Thank you for doing that in the name of the whole community. Next question.
Yeah.
Do you still foresee Viventor breaking even in 2020? And is this a critical turning point for the investment fund which owns the platform? So for Finstar?
Again, I repeat myself here. I will not even switch back. Is that if we stop all investment activities, all the growth activities, we are on break even right now even. So that's the good and bad. It would be good to still be able to grow, but now we have to sustain the business throughout this thing. So probably if let's say this continues for a few months and then we are back on the growth path again somehow, then probably no, we will not be able to reach a break-even point by the end of 2020. Before this, there was a plan to reach it by the end of 2020, yes. So it all depends on our possibilities and ambition to grow in the, let's say, post-crisis period.
Okay. Will Atlantis Financiers now focus exclusively on lending with invoice insurance and providing resource factoring for default risk protection?
That's a question for me, I think. Our credit agreements are standard based on recourse. When receivables turn out to be uncollectible, we transfer them back to our customer. And that regard, our working method will not change given that it already is. It's already a recourse.
So basically, it's already
But you only provide recourse factoring.
Yeah. So it's the question answered, I guess.
Question answered. Yeah, we don't have non-recourse, so it's just only recourse factoring, and mostly with invoice insurance.
Next question.
I'm waiting for it. Okay. How will Viventor ensure the agreement with Fortis payback schedule is going to be honored? If failing, what are the next legal steps, or is the case lost then? Very interesting. I'm also waiting for payments.
Yeah, so as all investors were informed, we were able to find a deal with Fortis. We restructured the whole portfolio to be repaid within a period of I think it was 36 months, and it is secured by a document called unconditional submission to pay, which is a very strict and legal document, legally strict document in Poland. It basically means that the person who signed this document is unconditionally submitting to the amount due, and there cannot be any negotiations and interpretations or questions about the amount or fact of it being paid or not. So we have this in place. And in case this company or any other company with which we are dealing with would miss payment, we would have possibility to enact this document immediately through court's bailiff, basically freezing bank accounts and taking as much money as possible from such a company. So I would say we couldn't have better security than that in this slide.
And when do you expect the next payments?
31st of March.
31st of March. Hopefully we'll receive it. We will follow up in the next webcast, maybe, because this will be the 1st of April.
Yeah.
So very curious about that.
Yeah.
I will note it and then I will ask you. Yeah.
Sure.
Regarding that. Okay, next question. So you also check that we don't miss one. Which of the loan originators are not secured, hedging against current and potential future volatile currency exchange rates? So it's all about, I think, currency.
Yeah. So basically, we have asked this question again of all our loan originators who are originating loans in other currency than euro. So all our investments are made in euro. And basically, the loan originators are borrowing money from investors in euro, and they are lending money in various currencies. Let's say Lex here is lending in euros as well in the Netherlands, but there are some loan originators that are lending in other currencies. In particular, it is probably problematic right now with the situation with rubles, and we have a loan originator from Russia, Kviko, who is borrowing in euros and lending in rubles. And we know that ruble rate has, well, maybe not everybody knows, but ruble rate has gone down quite somewhat. I think it is about significantly, I think it is about 10-15%, if I'm not mistaken, recently. But yeah, that's quite a lot. Which basically increased the funding costs for this company. Yes, before that they were raising money on Viventor for what 12-14%. Now it's plus 10-15% on top. So good thing is that they have they have loans which are very small amounts and distributed in small amounts to many people with quite high interest rates. In Russia, there is no small caps on how much you can offer for how much you can charge from the borrower. So they have quite a lot of gap there still. And on another good point is that they have €3 million cash cushion on their bank account right now. So they still have quite a lot of money accumulated as a reserve to compensate for extra costs that are happening. We are also asking to receive proof of this information, because it was last time presented to us in the Q4 of 2019 financial report. Now we want to see that this money is still there on their account and how much there is right now. So I don't know if we will have it by the time when we publish the report about loan originators. If not, we will update it separately afterwards. So with other countries, it's basically Balkan countries. Yes, the situation is also intense there. The funding costs are increasing because of the fluctuations in the FX rate. So all investors should take into account when making the choice to invest also the currency rate in which the loan originator is issuing the loans. That's true.
I think it's also our chance to learn a lot right now by this webcasts and so on, for many investors that might be not that deep in it, and now they have the opportunity to understand the business much better because we are talking so much about this in those days. So thank you for the transparency again. That's really also a big learning for a lot of us, also for me, to learn more and more by the time.
Okay.
So next question. I think I just checked the ruble, and it lost 23% in the last 3 months.
Yeah.
About 20% in the last 4 weeks. But on the year, it was about 16%. So yeah, it's very volatile. Is VIVENTOR sufficiently protected against cyber attacks, or taking extra measures now? Are offline backups for the ledger in place? Yeah, I think that's going back to the question also of the two-factor identification I was asking before.
Yeah, so currently we do not have two-factor authentication, but we have daily backups. They are in place. Every day we have downloading of the whole database of our transactions safely. Our technology stack is constantly updated on a daily basis, and all the employees' systems which they are using to connect to the platform, not to the platform, but to the backend services that we have to do from time to time, are secured by VPN, virtual private network. So even working from home with company laptops, we are accessing the systems through a secure channel. So you can't even reach them without having VPN access to it. So there are still work to be done, especially as you said, Bernhard, in this two-factor authentication. We were asked this also by quite a few other investors, and there are plans to implement it as well. Sure.
I hope soon. Would be really make good feeling.
There are many types of these two-factor authentication. There are some online tokens, there are SMSs, so we have to pick the right one that is mostly comfortable for investors as well. So it's not only security, but also comfort.
Maybe I can also add something, because for me it would be the most useful, how do you say, option if you take this Google token.
Google Authenticator.
Google Authenticator, yes, because I have all the others as well on this Google Authenticator, and so it would be easy just to log in if I do all the platforms. Then
that's actually
all others have Google Authenticator at the moment.
And it's free to use. Yeah.
And it's free.
Yeah, and it's really working perfect. Yeah, really working properly. So would be my personal recommendation as private investor. Okay, next one. How is it possible that liquidity issues already started? Some investors waiting since 19th and 20th of March. Free user balance should always be available for withdrawal. I think we already captured that one But
Yep.
maybe you want to say some words again about the settlement topic.
So basically, so there are two things, as I said again, just to reiterate. Current clearing cycle is 1 week, and when there are more withdrawals than there are new investments, we have to wait for some loan originators to repay to us for the buybacks, and only then we can process the withdrawals. And this is happening currently. Our cycle is every Monday, so we have to pay to investors on the day when we receive the money. So that's what we did. And in order to not have any questions or doubts in the future and to protect our platforms and its liquidity, in a matter of days, as I said before, we will be introducing this pending payments functionality, which will mean that when we will receive a repayment, from that moment, investor will see that the funds are in transit for him to be available.
Yeah. Sounds.
I'm still sharing the screen, I think. Yes.
Yeah. I can go to the next one.
Yeah.
Thank you. So given the fact Mintos got a better deal with A40, much shorter repayment time, extra collateral, will you securely tighten new agreements with future loan originators? Tough question.
I think we have a pretty good deal as well. We don't only focus on the term, but also we've had quite good collaboration from the company in the last days, and we know that the negotiation was not only to get so much pushy, but also for them to be able to repay. It had to be some kind of compromise. We could sit and say that repay whole debt immediately right now, but we went negotiation pathway, and I think we have a deal where we understand how they can raise money to repay installments in the term that we have agreed on. I think it's fair. On another side, we also included all late fees and all penalties for the whole amount that is due, which means that all investors that still have funds invested with them will receive, if they pay on time and complete their fulfill their obligations, all investors who have funds invested should receive both interest and late fees for all the time that they kept their investments. So overall, there should be no money lost in general.
It just takes time, and we don't receive interest rate for this time. Is it true?
You are receiving interest. That's what I'm saying. Late fees are included into that. So that's basically the deal. Without interest, and our late fees are, if you look at the agreement, is basically the amount of money you have invested, the amount of percent you invested. So if you're invested in a loan at 12%, your late fee is 12 on top. So in general, you're keeping investment at 24% rate.
Okay, sorry, was a little bit distracted for her. Okay.
And some of the loans, I think, were sold at 16%, and that means that in total rate for investors now is 32. So for them to be able to repay this, we negotiated a longer term. So to answer that bit, I think I answered. Will we securely tighten new agreements with future loan originators? I think we already implemented quite a few news after this situation. It actually happened, I think, on the time that I entered the company last summer, and after that we made quite a few adjustments to the agreements we have with loan originators. Also, it was announced previously that we are implementing. We have already implemented updated credit scoring model, and now are working to make it available to investors, so that investors will see what we believe is the credit score of each of our loan originator, and what limit they can borrow on the Vivento platform, and to update it on a quarterly basis. So there were plans to introduce it in these days. That is happening right now, but due to switching priorities, we will see. Hopefully we will release it also soon, but if not, then we'll see, maybe in a few weeks or so.
Sorry, but it's a question from myself at the moment, and I use this opportunity as well to have you here, Andrius. But so just to recap, we received the full interest rate from the contract and an additional fee.
Yes.
Late payment fee.
Yes.
And the late payment fee is to say the same, so 100% plus at least of the original.
It's the same as your investment rate. So if you have a loan at 12%, your penalty is 12% more. So your overall rate is 24%
per year. Oh, that's good. Okay, so hopefully we receive the money. Yeah.
So investors, in my opinion, investors who believe that they're able to repay this debt should be pretty happy.
So we don't have a crystal ball, but I think, yeah. So we have to stay positive and optimistic, and it's opportunity.
Yeah, and as I said previously, we also have this strong document backing up the whole repayment plan. So, and they are prepared to act upon it immediately if it is not performing.
So they are in our debt, yeah.
Yes.
Feels good somehow. Let's see how it feels finally. Okay, next question maybe. I'm also curious about the opinion on all our viewers right now. Maybe we can, maybe they can somehow exchange later in the groups.
I will see. I will see.
So, how buyback works? How to achieve 100% repayability? It's a very general question. I think it
general question. Maybe I can answer in general as well. Is that buyback works so that when a lending company lends money to a borrower, it basically sells claims of rights to this loan to investors on the peer-to-peer platform like ours, and if the borrower is in default, and it happens in the lending business in general, when the borrowers are in default, which means that they are not paying back the repayment installment payment for the loan for more than 60 days, the loan originator has to repay the remaining principal for this loan to VIVENTOR'S investors. So this is what is happening. So when the loan originator sees that the borrower has not paid for more than 60 days, he knows that he has to pay to VIVENTOR'S investors the whole amount that is missing. For this reason, the risk of investments when you are making an investment on VIVENTOR is basically your as investor's risk is the risk of default of the loan originator and not of its borrower. So you're not so much concerned about loans in which you are invested. You are mostly concerned about the company that has given these loans and that is guaranteeing the buyback of these loans for you. How to achieve 100% repayability? If it was like that, then there would be no interest probably attached, because interest is equal to risk. So you cannot achieve 100% repayability because there is always a risk of loan originator going into default. There is always this risk.
Yeah, as it is with the borrowers. But I think maybe we can add that there is also the claim, of course. It depends on the loan originator, I think, but maybe you can say some words about this as well. Is there a direct claim to the borrower or not, or in the contract of?
In our platform, all loan originators are selling direct claims to end borrowers. So
it's a big plus.
It's a big plus because even in the case of default, if the platform VIVENTOR platform stands, we still are able to operate as a intermediary between investors, let's say an agent for all investors, and the let's say administrator of the defaulted lender company to collect the claims from as much as possible from the portfolio.
Then it's just an investment without buyback, I would say,
to
make it easy.
Yeah.
In case they are going bankrupt. Yeah. That's a big plus, because a lot of other platforms don't have these direct claims. And I think, of course, everything has advantages and disadvantages, but I think it's a plus. Next question.
Mm-hmm. Bernhard?
How do you, yep, sorry. I was just watching, we are doing more than 1 hour already. How do you verify if the underlying loans has truly been extended when a loan originator extends a loan? How do you verify true borrower payment delays from loan originators? So it's about controlling the loan originator.
So currently, we don't have this functionality of loan extensions in place, and which means that if a loan originator is extending a term of the loan with his borrower, what is happening on the Viventor platform is that he basically buys back the loan from investors and they relist it with the new terms on the platform. This is happening right now. And as I said previously in this conversation, we plan to introduce the reflection of this extension to our investors as well. So if, let's say, Lex or another loan originator agrees with his borrower that the end payment for the loan is delayed, he will be able to send this information to us, and we will update the loans to our investors, because what investors are basically buying, as we discussed previously, they are buying the end claims to the end loans. So they should be aware of what is happening with this loan, if it is extended, if it is bought back, if it is in default, etc. So and this is especially important when if so happens that in the nearest future the whole portfolio will have to be delayed because of government's action or something like that. So we must reflect this to investors, because otherwise we just can say goodbye to this lending company.
Yeah, I understand that totally. I mean, I don't really understand these freeze on loan payments by the regulations, but okay, that's a different topic. But I think I can understand that you have to implement it somehow. If this happens, maybe it's one of the risks we have as an investor. Also, I don't really understand that somebody else can decide what to do with our money, but okay. That's governmental regulations. Next question, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, it's connected to this, I think. Will you copy Minto's pending payments system and allow increased number of loans extensions, decreased loan originator buyback frequency, which has caused many complaints? I think this is exactly what we covered before.
Yeah.
Maybe just because it caused many complaints. Maybe you want to say something about that?
Complaints are basically, as I understand, are because investors would like to receive their money faster than it is happening. So we are also now talking to all loan originators that they should not be, let's say, delaying by any means the payments, and if they want their investors to stay happy and to continue investing with them, they should pay even ahead of schedule and ahead of time if it's possible. So no, this is concerning basically all those lenders who are in the EEA and can make a quick SEPA transaction, which takes not even a day to process. So all loan originators are informed about it. And if they fulfill these rules, there shouldn't be a long payment delays and no unhappy investors. But I cannot guarantee for all loan originators.
I think the point is also about these extensions, and I think you have to see the bigger picture in this situation, because on the one hand you have these regulations with this freeze on loan payments, maybe for 3 months. On the other hand, we have to understand the investors that let's say we have a contract, we have a valid contract, and it was in the contract that we get back the money and not an extension for 3 more months. Yeah. So it's very difficult to get together both sides, I think, because it's also some regulation that whether the loan originator or the P2P platform can change, I think, because it's just from the state.
Well, yes. So we are again, we are a marketplace. We are not investor and we are not loan originator.
But we're between.
We are in between, and we are basically setting the rules by which these both parties are signing up and doing the business, right? So of course, my position as a manager of Viventor is to make sure that investors continue receiving their invested money and to make sure that the businesses, the lending businesses, are able to continue to run. So if I see that, not I, but our, let's say, review shows that loan originator is able to buy back the claim, we will force him to buy back this claim as fast as possible. But if there will be, let's say, significant unexpected changes in these regulations of government, and if his whole portfolio is extended and it's a question of let's say, it's a question of stopping the business in general and going into default, I think it's in the interest of all investors to give us some kind of prolongation to this loan originator to still be able to repay his claims, rather than to stop him immediately and then not even know if you will, how long it will take to receive these investments in the longer period. It can take years, probably, in this context. Okay. So yeah, that's the process.
I think we will follow up this in the next webcast, because this one is very long in any way, so I will not go too much in details right now. Let's take the next one. We already had this one. Okay. What concrete lessons has Viventor learned from the still ongoing fragile situation with a 40 loan originator, which has been a nightmare for investors?
Well, basic learning is that we have to keep a close eye on our partners, on our loan originators, and to constantly monitor their activities, not only looking at the numbers that we get from them, but also doing site visits, doing physical checks on the business, if it's how well it's working, what are the customers, how portfolio is performing, and to have these checks not once a year, but once a quarter, with higher risk even more often. And in this situation like now, doing it even faster than that. Of course, also what we learn is the legal process that has to be in place. It's now we have, I think, good experience in this situation and know how to act in should the second case like that happen. So it would be not the first one for us. So we know already have some lessons learned, and we have contingencies in place for that. So yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah, and I think we are all learning out of that, to be honest. Also, we investors and all of us are learning, because it's a very new industry. I mean, it's not so new, yeah, because there were some already since 2007 and longer, but at least it's a pretty new industry, and we are all learning, and especially now we have the opportunity to learn more. So I think it's a process. Next question. And maybe we are even stronger after this crisis right now. What happens to Atlantis Financiers if bad debt costs go up to 40 to 60% and funding costs increase by 3% per annum? Will you still be able to run a viable business? Lex, you are still here? Yes.
I am here. Yeah, I'm still here. Well, it's unlikely to think that so many debts will arise since the credits are all covered by collaterals and comes with personal guarantees. So if there are no more opportunities for enforcement in the company, we have the opportunity to address the director personally. And our operation costs mainly consist of personal costs. In the event of sharp drop down in the turnover, we have the government that takes over the personal costs. So if we then have to refinance more expensive after this, we will still profitable.
So basically, that you have some runway ahead of you, some reserves for runway.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And they are apparently backed by the government, of course, since the measures they offered the small medium enterprises.
So there is a plus and a minus on the governmental regulations right now and changes.
They are, yes.
Okay, Bernhard.
What actions do you take to keep investors' trust? In example, improve customer service, ensuring quick withdrawals, engage in social media, as we do it right now, I think. Answer tough questions, as you do it right now.
So yeah, a few things where it's already an example of what we're doing to have investors' trust. Basically, that's the whole point of this conversation, to build the investors' trust. And to build the trust, in my opinion, is that show them how much work and what work we are doing together with the team right now, working virtually 24/7 around the clock, and doing all we can to get as much information as possible and ensure that this information is provided to our investors. It's believe me, it's really tough times, but I'm so happy that I have such a good and motivated team that are always so believing in this process that we're doing right now in this business, and the future of it, that I couldn't be happier in this situation. And it's not only motivation, but also professionalism. I think our people who are working with loan originators, with analytics, with credit scoring, are of some of the, let's say, most experienced people that I have worked with before. And I'm just trying to show to all investors that at least what we are doing is that we are doing our best with good professionalism to make sure that their investments are protected. Nevertheless, we are in a higher than normal risk business and in tough times right now. So of course, investors' money is at risk. It cannot be otherwise. What we can do as a platform is that to make sure that it is as much protected as possible. And I want to everyone to know that we as investor platform are doing everything that is in our power to do that, and we have good resources and professionals to do that.
I mean, of course, there are dark clouds right now over the whole lending business because of this situation. Yeah. But I think it, as I wrote it in a Facebook posting some weeks ago, it was maybe some, we didn't know that it comes like that, but maybe was some feeling about this. But if you have the right partners, I think it can even feel a little bit cozy, and we can get stronger. And we should also not forget that we are all in one boat. Yeah. I mean, it's one industry, and we are all part of this: the investor, the marketplace, the borrower, the loan originator. Everybody has its part on that, yeah, and so at least we have to work together. It's very important, I think, like we do it today.
Okay, let's move on.
Waiting for that. Thank you. So, do Finster Financial Group finance also loan originator Cashwagon, which is issuing loans in Southeast Asia? If yes, then will Finster help Cashwagon with additional money? I don't know so much about the Cashwagon, but maybe you do more.
I wouldn't want to let's say speculate or answer on. It's not related to Viventor. It's more a question to Finster Financial Group, and I'm not really aware of their let's say endeavors in Southeast Asia so much right now. So no big comment from my part here.
Just a question. Maybe you don't want to have it live, but I do it anyway, as I do it all usually. Maybe it's possible one time to have an interview with management from Finster. I think it would be very interesting.
I don't see why not.
I mean, I think it's really interesting for all of us. Yeah.
Sure. Let's discuss it.
Okay, super. Next question.
I reached the bottom of the page. Let me share it.
Yeah, we're already doing nearly 2 hours. Okay, so yeah, but this is a very general but interesting question. I was waiting for this one as well. How will COVID-19 affect P2P investment industry in general?
Bernhard, maybe you want to take that as well? You were also always asking questions. Now maybe a good time for you to...
I'm a little bit cold, sorry. It's really cold in my room. But no problem. Okay, so how is it affecting P2P? I mean, of course, we all don't have this crystal ball. So I think at the moment we all have to be strong, to have good nerves. There's nothing for, I would say, investors that are like very easy freaking out. Yeah, but at least I have to mention again, as I said in so many interviews I have with different people in the last days, yeah, and I'm really a little bit boring, not boring, tired right now because of all these questions I get again and again and always saying the same. Yeah, but I think it's also an opportunity for our business because First of all, we have a nominal fixed income. We have the value of these loans, yeah. So it's not as volatile as it is on the stock market, for example. And there will be a demand of loans in the next weeks and months. And I think we might even get borrowers with better credit rates than we got it in earlier times, because now we have not so much money from the investors, because they are they have a lot of fears and they don't want to invest their money right now in P2P and lending business. And on the other hand, we have the demand for loans, which will be maybe a little bit delayed, but with other CEOs I was talking in the last days, they said already in the consumer loan business, they have already an increase in some countries, for example, in Spain or in Poland, where everything started maybe a little bit earlier, or in Italy. And so I think there are opportunities, and so rates are going up and risk is going up, both. And now we have to find that it's compared to each other.
I can also add to that what was my personal thinking is that in comparison with equity markets, of course, this is fixed income asset class, which means that it doesn't have as much volatility as the stock markets, where we saw let's say biggest drops since 2009 and biggest increases since 1933, as it was written.
Yesterday.
Yeah. So historical actions are happening here, and then on peer-to-peer industry, in the meantime, it's still same old fixed rates. So it's, of course, it's all about the matter of how what will be the demand for lending in general, and what will be the possibilities and capabilities of borrowers to repay the debts. And if I would be looking also when making an investment and choosing into investing here, I would also very much choose and look at the country in which the company is registered and where the loans are issued, and what are the let's say regulations and the attitude towards the lending and business in general in that particular country, because many countries are taking now very different actions. And anyway, all investors would have to make their research as well. Some of it you can of course find on our platform, but always I also encourage you, if you want to invest a bigger amount, it's possible, and some investors are doing that. Lex can confirm, to have a direct discussion and talks with loan originators. We can get you in touch. We can have individual conversations. It's always possible to do.
Good to hear. And I think we cannot mention it often enough that everybody and every investor, I think it's a general thing, especially as private investor, if you're doing such investments, is responsible by himself for his own decisions. Yeah, we can just exchange, we can learn from each other, but then you have to make, as I do it as well, my own decision, what I'm doing with my money, yeah, and then I'm responsible for what happens, yeah, and nobody else. I think this is one point that's very important. Just to mention, and also I'm just checking CNBC meanwhile, and we are at 5% plus on the stock market today again, and this also shows the opportunity, of course, we have right now in the stock market, I think, because we had a lot of losses, yeah, but now I can understand that people say, okay, I use these discounts, yeah, as I did it the last week, massive, to be honest, yeah. Yeah, anything to add on this question from anybody?
You both covered everything. It's quite clear. Yeah.
I think we have all the same opinion, at least at the moment, on that topic. And we all don't have this crystal ball. So I think it's very exciting times. Yeah? I mean, it's also hard times for us, yeah, because I get messages all the time. I'm getting distracted from all the bad news and good news I get from different P2P platforms. I think some of the viewers might be curious what I got. It's not about Viventor, it's about another platform, but so it's not for this webcast, I think. Next question, can you include in your monthly newsletter the actual progress of A40 and its repayments, transparency in detail? Yeah, it would be very nice.
Part of the deal that we got with A40 was the deal of, let's say, confidentiality. So all the particularities of the progress of this deal will be communicated only to those investors who have 40 loans invested, and it will not be, let's say, distributed publicly on our Facebook page or our blog post, etc. So that's the main reason, and that was one of their major requirements.
Okay, next one is, what do you consider your top biggest challenge at the moment, and how will you proactively address this as a serious, trustworthy company?
Biggest challenge at the moment is dealing with investor trust, because we are doing checks on our loan originators. We don't see things that we should be really concerned about right now. Tomorrow we will be doing these checks again, and the next day after again, and we will be informing investors about it. My biggest challenge is that investors on Viventor platform trust that we are doing our best, and trust that we are professional enough to provide this information in a qualitative manner to them. So that is my biggest challenge now.
Okay.
Sharing back the screen. I think we have 2 questions left. I think there are last minute questions from the time that they have been posted.
Are you continuing to seek out and onboard new loan originators?
No, so far we stopped all our scouting activities. So we have quite a big pipeline. I think 15 loan originators in total who are willing to go on Viventor platforms. We even made some announcements about India even being one of them, but for now we have, of course, to wait and see what is going on, to have some at least further stable outlook to continue this. So for now we're focusing on existing portfolio basically.
Yeah, but it's a big learning at the moment that we can use this experience for further times. So why do you basically all Atlantis Financiers full bullet loans seem to run 60 days late and into buyback? Does this reflect the individual loan performance?
That will be a question for me, I guess. So first of all, it's possible that some of the loans have been delayed. It's quite common. We deal with invoices. Sometimes payments from debtors can be received a bit later. That will explain why some of the loans have been delayed. For now, there's no difference between now and the past few months. No, it's quite common.
And you basically, the whole business is funding of invoices, right? And invoice financing, I mean. So
yeah, 20-80. 80% is invoice financing, and 20% is long-term loans.
Yeah.
But we haven't refinanced them all at the marketplace. Just invoice finance is refinanced.
And what portion of the portfolio you mentioned earlier is insured by these insurance companies?
18-19%, almost everything.
Okay.
Almost everything. But there are some rules, of course, for the invoice insurance company. We have sort of a time frame that we have to wait until we can claim by the insurance company. So first of all, we have to do our own actions to just have a good debtor management.
Of course.
Yes.
Okay, guys, I think we have managed to cover all of the questions. In total, we had 36 questions.
And I think next time we can make follow-up questions and additional ones.
Yes, I wanted all viewers of this webcast who are still with us today right now to post questions that you would like us to cover in our next webcast, and maybe even offers guests that we could invite to this webcast and see what questions that you would like to ask them. And also would like to mention that I got a few requests today from people who couldn't attend this live podcast if there will be a recording. Yes, the whole thing has been recorded, and we will be posting it on our Facebook page and also on our YouTube channel. And Bernhard as well, maybe you will also share it with your viewers for further review as well.
Yeah, I will post a link, I think, from YouTube. It doesn't make sense to upload it twice on YouTube.
Of course, but
this
just
usually
share.
not work, but I will share the link, yeah. That's absolutely no problem. And maybe one last question to both of you, and maybe all of us. I can also say some sentences to that. How long do you think will this situation continue with the coronavirus when everything locked down? What's just your personal opinion on that? Yeah, what do you guess? I mean, it's guessing, of course. Andrius?
I was thinking about that today, and I understand that it will have probably two stages. One stage is the limitation of and decrease in new cases, and when we will reach, each country will gradually reach a case that similar to what was happening in China, when you have no more new cases. But and then we will say that okay, now we are more or less fine. But then probably the second stage will come when we will need to sustain this 0 case rate somehow, to not allow new cases to pop out. That will mean that the lockdowns will still have to be in place for some time, and the industry and international trade will probably still suffer from these lockdowns for a time to come, until ultimate solution is found, like cure or vaccine or something like that. But I wouldn't speculate on that as much. But what I see is that the stopping of new cases is not the end for sure. So it will be a longer process.
Lex?
Well, I expect that everything will be take around 3 months, but after that, there may be something to see in the financial markets more than now. So yeah, that's my opinion. Yeah, I think 3 months.
Okay, because of course nobody could have guessed that this happens some months ago. Yeah? I mean, nobody had this in mind. I'm also the opinion from 8 to 12 weeks. Yeah, so about 3 months as well, because we saw this in China. And I think there will also be, the nature will give us some immunity, because people who already had it will not get it again. And I'm just somebody, a stupid, simple private investor. Yeah, I have no idea about all that. But I think that there are a lot of more cases, infections, that are not detected in all countries on the whole world, because they are not doing enough testing, because they don't have the chance to test so many people. But a lot of people don't have the symptoms, but then they will have immunity. And so this will also be a helpful thing by the nature later at the second wave. So I would say 8 to 12 weeks to be optimistic.
So for everyone watching this video blog, thank you very much for staying with us. Thank you, my guests Lex and Bernhard, for being with me today for our first pilot of this webcast. I think it went quite well. I think we answered all questions openly and honestly, and I hope that it was the answers were good enough for investors. If there are some more particular questions that you would like to ask myself, Bernhard, or Lex, or any other of our loan originators, ask them here in the comments below. Contact us also by phone or by email, whichever way is more preferable to you. And most importantly, stay safe and stay healthy for the sake of yourself and for the sake of the community where you live. Thank you again, and let's see each other again. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much also from my side. Thank you for watching, to all the viewers, and thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.